it should be pretty candy cane. Those 3 bullets at the bottom, those are your credit. Tomorrow, wait, you're period 2? Thursday, I need you to be ready to discuss the tragedy of the commons. Raise your hand if you remember or wrote down what your guided reading assignment was. Raise your hand now if you don't know. You don't know? Does anybody remember what his was? Somebody was supposed to tell him. Yeah.
I was C, so I'd say you're D.
4.
Numbers. Yeah,
4. Yeah. Antagonist.
Yeah,
Were
you're
you a 1?
I remember I looked.
Was this person here?
No, he was a 4. I remember because I was a 4 and he got the same number.
Whatever. I don't care. Oh yeah, because Paige wasn't here. I mean, the other was sorry. Yeah, might be. So, yeah, you are a 4, and it is to antagonize or respond to the author. So, what did the author overlook? What else would you? How does it come? Like, hey, you know, you didn't think about this, or I believe separately somehow respond to the author. Yes.
For the quote, what is okay if you just like underline it?
Absolutely. You can keep it all in your packet. You're not going to turn it into me. It'll just get you ready for the class activity on Thursday. Anybody else?
Are we supposed to just write the postcard or do you want to type?
Handwritten separate sheet of paper for the Happy Fishing postcard. Handwritten separate sheet of paper. Anybody else? Cool. So let's talk about Unit 1 and then we'll go to Easter Island. Please take out your Unit 1 study guide and reading packet.
Where did should we get up?
That Unit 1 study guide. And this Unit 1 reading packet. Okay, so first of all, the reading packet is like a little textbook. You'll notice that unlike your textbook, the content is numbered. Please look at the screen. 22, 24, 23, 25, 26, and this might help. Okay. Every one of my units has a reading packet. They are usually longer than this one. And they, like at university, include relevant material that your book did not have. They are numbered. I'll try to remember to explain that later. This is the study guide. The way it works is I highlight the book. You know, I get a free copy of the book that's a little different from your edition. I look that over and I highlight the stuff I think is important. Then I write questions so that your answer is what I highlighted. I prompt you to make the same notes that I liked out of your book. Then I rephrase those questions, and that's the exam. My questions are often very detailed. So in class, you'll bring your notes, and I'll just help you make your notes better, because I kind of know which details you need. The content is all dovetailed, so I don't have to ask you questions about everything. I can just ask you a question about this thing, and that will include all the other stuff. Does that make sense to everybody? Because the content all fits together. So, this is my whole class. In case you forget what class you're in, it already says that on top. All study guides say the unit, the title, and the chapters, a summary of the unit, then a block of vocabulary. Usually I remember to put the chapters, but sometimes I forget and you have to figure out where to find those words. That's not all the vocab in the chapter, that's the vocab I thought was important in the chapter. Some of the words bolded in your book aren't relevant to our class. So you're not defining all the vocab in the book, you're defining the words that I think are important. And a lot of times, I will make it a vocab term, but your book did not. Your book might just assume that you know the basics of evolution, and I'll be like, yo, those words, you gotta know what they mean. So sometimes you'll find the vocab words in a little table on the side, or in like labels on a figure. You know what I mean by that? Like on a diagram, it'll say like, this is the tail and this is the head. And it'll be like define tail and head, relevant to a picture. Got that? Then there are numbered questions. These are me telling you the notes that you need. So, I asked you blah, 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 blah. I pointed out a typo in the book. It's one of the only typos in the whole book. You can see I made a little typo alert right there. Check that out. The following questions refer to the Unit 1 reading packet. So this is not found in your book. These are found in that reading packet I showed you. So remember the numbers 22 to 26? They correspond with questions 22 to 26. These obvious? Then, it says right there, the following questions refer to the first in-class movie, RTSTP number 1. RTSTP number 1. It's a series of films that was made like in the 80s. Check this out. I had to find VHS and then translate them to DVD for the digital generation. But one of them was all like tangled up, you know, because these had tape on the inside. Has anybody actually disassembled one of these? Kids in my generation, we all did, but of course, technology was passed, got the way of the 8-track. So the quality of the movies that I was showing you, it's a series of 10. I think I show 7 of them. The quality, shut up, I mean, the quality of the videos that I show you in my class, for these ones in particular, is very, very bad. These were from a library, then they got donated to like some church in New York, I think. And I had to promise them that I would mention a particular disease in my course in order to meet their social mission so that they could convince their board of directors to donate the movies to me.
What's the disease?
I can't remember. My promises mean nothing. Yeah.
And this whole study guide is due The following Friday after this week.
No, not quite. I mentioned the movies because they're really old and they're really crappy, but the unbelievable coincidences, they perfectly parallel the book because one of the dudes who wrote our textbook early in his career helped the producers of the film series make the outline for their movies. So they use a lot of the same lingo and it's like super relevant and the stuff is like totally outdated, but seeing what environmental science was 30 years ago, in my opinion, is kind of important to talk about environmental science now. History matters and the context is important. And I like showing movies once per unit because it introduces a lot of the content in a visual manner. And it gives me a day to work at my desk instead of like yelling at you all day. And it kind of gives everybody a little break from the lecture onslaught and it makes the classroom kind of cool and dark and you can kind of like veg out and just sort of take notes. And so anyway, check that out. There are questions that refer to the films that I show in class, all the way down to number 38. And then, the last page is the explanation. That's why I blew off your question. I blew off your question because someone asked. Okay. You complete the homework assignments. Both vocabulary list and study goals must be handwritten in your own handwriting. No typey-typey. If you break bones, I need a letter from the doctor about how long you'll be needing to type. Otherwise, must be handwritten. Next. Hello, Mr. Beckfield.
Sir,
How are you, my friend?
doing well. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it. Oh no, man, no problem. No one absent?
No, and as a matter of fact, the two who have been are no-shows on my roster. So my actual count, I don't think has changed much since the first day of school.
So are there 2 kids on your roster that aren't here?
No longer, they have been removed from my roster.
Okay.
So now they don't count as absent.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. If you would like to collaborate, you have to write your own work. I hope that's obvious. You'll be graded on completeness and accuracy. In general, you will not be asked to copy from the book. Instead, you make your own meaning. Write with pencil or pen. Write your name, period, H in the top right-hand corner, and title the assignment. I've changed that a little bit. Remember that this is the way that you have to title all of your that on the right-hand corner. Questions about this? You don't have to write H anymore. You can cross that out if you want. Then you define each word and you answer each study goal. Please look up. These are your 4 assignments. 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. 1.1 is the first assignment in Unit 1. That's not a section of your book. You understand what I mean by that? 3.2 is the second chapter in Unit 3. Got it? So 1.1 is all the first chapter vocab plus study goals 1 through 7. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. 1.2 is the second chapter vocab and study goals 8 to 13. Study goals 8 to 13 are addressed in the second chapter of your book. Assignment 1.3 is the third chapter's vocab, not all of it, just the words that I underlined. And the study goals 14 to 21. Assignment 1.4 is the reader plus the questions that you'll answer in class from the movie. See, reader, packet, and study goals from the movie. Would anybody like to ask me anything at this time? I want to be helpful, but I have to move, so please ask. Yes?
It says due, and then.
Ah, yes. I always have a blank there because every year the dates are different. But 1.1 is due Friday the 4th, 1.2 is due Tuesday the 8th, 1.3 and 1.4 are both due on Wednesday the 9th. And I rarely have multiple assignments together, but this unit is pretty candy cane. We're just kind of getting started. So these are kind of lightweight assignments. I don't mind clustering them. I rarely have multiples on one day.
Wait, it would be the 10th though, right? Because it's 2, 4, 6, right?
And this is 2, so yes, it would be Thursday. Yes. So yeah, it's Thursday the 10th, not Wednesday the 9th. Are there any more brain busters for me? Yes?
Wait, so the first one was the 4th, the second one the 8th, the 3rd and 4th, both the 9th.
10.
Yeah, what he said. You had the first two dates correct, and then your block days were the wrong one, because we are a Thursday block, not the Wednesday block. So by the way, whenever you see that, please look up. I will always have Wednesday/Thursday. So assuming that you'll be attending period 2, your assignments are due on the Thursday of the week. If you need to attend period 1, 3, or 5 that week, then you would be coming to the Wednesday of it, so that you do that day. Question? Yes?
Should we use write this as assignment number 1.1?
Okay.
The assignment number of this? Or
Is
the-
1.1, assignment 1.1. Yeah, so right there, see how it says assignment dash point dash?
Yeah.
3.2 and
Oh, so
4.6.
each one of these is a different, like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3.
That's right, those are different assignment names, that's what I named them. That's not a section of your book. If I ever refer to something in your book, I'll say chapter 27, or I'll say page 243, or I'll say figure 3.1, or diagram 10.6. Other questions? Oh.
So we just keep notes on what's on here.
Yeah, and it looks like this. Anything which is underlined is vocab. Notice that, remember I told you that the headings have changed? So she titled it like the old style. It says apes at the top and then the title goes on the, but you don't do that. You put the assignment title up on the top and you don't have to write apes because I can recognize my assignments. That make sense? You notice that difference? She's living in the past, you're living in the present. Then she wrote down the word and some blah 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 for each of them. Yeah.
But the vocab words aren't in the book, so we just look them up.
You can find them on the internet. Sometimes you can just kind of take it out of like from the context. And coincidentally, as a language learner, I can give you a hint that the definitions in the back of the book are not a good way to construct meaning. Like, I know that you can copy the definitions, and when you get lazy and you already think you kind of know the word, it's convenient. Separately, the best way to construct meaning in a way that's helpful for you is always to base it on the context in which you read that word. Yeah.
Quick question, sorry to interrupt again. Did you count those two in the back?
Yes, they're the two seniors, I believe. Are they on there?
Yes. Just double checking. Thank you.
Way ahead of you, buddy. You're welcome. Fine. Okay, so look at. Check out this one. Perfect example of how my class works. Look at the third vocabulary term. She had a definition. She came to class and I told her. Canary in a mine shaft might seem like an obvious example, but that does not work for the College Board because she put a little asterisk. Must be a natural component of an ecosystem. And then she found an example later in my class. It says on the left-hand margin, local weed only grows in places with selenium in the soil, so that indicates soil quality. Okay, that's how my class works. Just a random example from some unit and some kid who thought that was valuable. You got what you got out of the book, and then you can move whatever up. Check it out. After you have all the vocab, you can see that she might have, there we go. She made some notes right there. In pencil. Then study question number 9. Some notes that she added in class. There's number 11 and 12. Those are pretty much her notes or her notes. There's number 10, and then at the bottom of number 10, she put some notes from a lab that we had. She made a totally random drawing of a volcano that I can't explain. There it is. Preserve wildlife to provide seed biodiversity. She sort of found the stuff that was important in my lecture and added to the content. So she added some vocab stuff, she added some stuff on the side. Some people would force you to use Cornell notes. I don't care how you do this, but the concept of Cornell notes is good. The formatting for me is awkward. I hate writing on half my paper. How many of you have the same experience with Cornell notes? Okay, don't give up on the concept though. Because breaking your paper up into visual, like first pass, second pass, that might be awkward. But the concept of making a set of notes and then annotating them, just so you know, like we can talk about the brain science some other time, that's actually really good for your brain. And you should know that in almost every discipline people take notes. It's not like a specific punishment for being a teenager today. Like if you want to learn classical music, you take notes on your notes. And like if you're a carpenter, you take notes on your notes. Like I build my own ammunition for hunting, and I annotate my notes, and that's very helpful. Somebody had a hand? Yes.
So when we come to class with like 1.1 done,
Yeah,
we're not gonna turn it in immediately because you're gonna get a lecture about the notes.
that's right. You will keep them with you. I will stamp it. That's a middle finger. I will stamp it. And then on the day of the exam, I will have a thing that says, make a packet out of these, and you put it in there with a big old stapler right next to it. That makes sense? So you turn in all of your notes when you no longer need them because you're taking the exam. These are your working document. One last thing I gotta tell you. I talk to a lot of my students after they leave my class. Some of them go on to do impressive academic things, personal things, and I ask them, did my system get you ready for college? And my kids say, yes, that is how college was. It's easy to cheat on the homework. My TAs will come by and they'll go, yeah, okay, that looks done, and they go, stamp. And then they'll go, yep, that looks done. And they'll just keep on walking. They're not gonna read every single answer. You can cheat. Sometimes I notice, and students go on to live in infamy. Can you read that? I like number 14. It says, Losing My Religion by R.E.M. was actually a good song. Almost like Nirvana. Grunge music from the 1990s is good, in small doses wonderful. Couldn't agree more, Mio. Couldn't agree more.
What's like, can I do the apes homework?
It's dance, right? They got credit. They got credit. So every now and then I pace in the classroom. So I was like sitting here like talking to my students and somebody was like blabbing too much, and so I was like sipping on my coffee, some kid like blah 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 blah. So I was like, I looked down and I'm like, oh yeah, Nirvana? And I kinda grabbed his paper and I was like, wait. And I took my TA aside, I was like, you stamped this? And then I stole his paper and I kept it forever. I blacked out his name and I laminated it. Someday if you're bored, it lives on my pegboard. I don't ever want to lose this. So that lives over there. I also have a student's attendance report who mysteriously had verified absences only on my days of exam, only in my period. So you can check that out too. She was a total cheat, and apparently her mother let her. Look, I know you can cheat the homework. I'm perfectly aware of this. I'm trying to make it more difficult. I'm trying 2 new things that will hopefully make it less easy to cheat, but ultimately I can't stop you, and obviously you can copy each other's work, and that's very difficult to detect with handwritten work. Gotta warn you that like, if you cheat me on all the homework, congratulations, you now have a 30% in the class. The exams being 1/2 of the course credit, you may find that you've cheated yourself. The content gets harder as we go and it gets cumulative. So you can kind of skate by on unit 1, like it's pretty candy cane, most of you already know the basics. But when you get to the trickier units, if you cheat me on the homework, okay, like, I don't think you've exactly cracked the system yet. And I have to warn you that from students who've done the class in the past, if you do invest in the notes, the class is much easier. By the time you get to the end of the year, you got this big pile of notes where you actually pulled the content out of the book and then like you did it the way it's intended. It actually, I believe, makes it easier for a gross majority of students. Is that a fair statement? Is that a fair statement? Not even speaking for yourselves, but having known many students in both of your respective classes, period 1 and 6, you agree with that?
Yeah.
I encourage you to ask your siblings, like you can cheat the homework and you might get, you know, like think you can study the textbook, but that's not how I did well at university, that's not how you will do well at university, and I don't recommend that for my class. Anybody want to ask me anything else about the homework? Yes.
Do you recommend that we write the question?
So glad you asked, because I forgot to say. Yes, I do recommend that you explain your question. So you can just kind of phrase it to include the prompt. George Washington's teeth were not actually made of wood, blah, blah, blah. But if you're looking in 2 months to study for the finals, there's a final every semester, or for the AP test, and number 2 says no, or no he didn't, you'd be like, that does not help. Or they were not actually wood, that wouldn't help either. And so you've made your notes irrelevant. You don't need to write the whole question. Sometimes my questions are like a paragraph. But you do want to explain your content, make it a usable piece on its own. Yeah.
So the numbers in the reading packet have to do with the study.
Corresponding question number. Who else? So let's talk about Easter egg. That's pretty funny, right? The whole thing is like that. The kid was so sweet too. He was like not a horrible person. It made it very difficult to be angry. But I did shame him. You should know that if I find out you cheated, I'll tell everyone. Repeatedly. My screensaver was one of my students last year cheating. And he literally, I don't think he actually wept, but he got really heated about it.
Who was it?
There's no point in talking trash at this point of the game.
Yes, there is.
But I'm not going to, and neither are you. So the island had a name before a white person arrived on Easter. Yes?
Should we be taking notes?
Well, that's your call. I don't exactly plan to test you on these facts. This is mostly an argument for environmental science. That's the island. It's called Rapa Nui. It was discovered on Easter Sunday by some Norwegian person. Scandinavian or something. It became part of Chile. It was colonized by the Polynesians, and I should warn you, I have like a secret fetish for Polynesians. They are the most hardcore humans. Pretty much, if you are not a Polynesian, you are a wimp. Polynesians sailed the open ocean before modern navigational technology, no sextants, telescopes, or compasses. They had no written maps because they didn't have paper. And they traveled as far as 2,000 open miles, which, if you're just rowing in blue water, is pretty difficult. They would sail for months at a time. They would hop overboard to poop in the ocean. They would use the hull of the boat and the sail to capture rainwater. The sail was just for wind assist when the wind was favorable, but mostly they rowed. Sunrise to sunset. And slept on each other's laps. Yes? They sometimes carried pigs when they knew that they were heading to an island that they planned to colonize. But when they were exploring, they just took some fish jerky and maybe some root crops that they could store for a while. But mostly they ate en route raw fish that they pulled from the sea. Savage. Those helmets are for sun protection, not for doing battle. Because you get pretty sunburnt in the open Pacific on a nice summer day. And they had little slits to keep them from going glare blind. That is so freaking gnarly.
Was it made out of like a coconut or?
I don't know, but I think not. There was 3 waves of Polynesian expansion, the first, the second, and the third. The first was Greater Southeast Asia. The second was what we call Polynesia or Micronesia. And then finally, those 3 red arrows are Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand, the 3 big shots, so to speak. Those were very, very large crossings. The first 2 are the sort of thing that somebody with good physical conditioning might be able to pull off today. Those 3 arrows are like burly suicide missions. Like, not many people would survive that even with the best of technologies. They found this little tiny island. Anybody know how small it was?
So like 64.
That's right, 64 square miles. Anybody know how big Santa Cruz? Anybody been to Santa Cruz Island? How big is Santa Cruz Island? 93 square miles. Easter Island at one time supported a population between 15 and 20,000 Easter Islanders on an island 2/3 of Santa Cruz Island. It was dry, windy, hot, thin volcanic soils, very little terrestrial productivity, not much to eat on the land, but it is this gigantic deep water pinnacle in a very turbid part of the ocean. So there's always onshore wind at one part of the island, which means there's always upwelling on the offshore side. Does that make sense? Because the water creates the upwelling, and the wind creates the upwelling. So wherever the wind is blowing, you go to the other side of the island, and fishing is just off the hook. I probably made that pun before, but I didn't mean to make it just now. That was good. And I can't show you the picture of their palm trees because
They don't have it.
their palm trees are extinct, but they had a giant palm tree. This is another giant palm tree called the Senegalese giant palm. Those are little baby palm trees. You see children in the front. These are working at a nursery where they grow palm trees for landscaping in the region. And it's safe to assume that the Rapa Nui giant palm was something like this. Those are little baby ones. You all know that the Rapa Nui probably didn't do too well with their trees. And there's 2 ways to tell the story. There's the short version, which you've already heard, right?
Yeah.
Could anybody quickly paraphrase what happened to Easter Islanders? Just like they did and then and then and then.
Europeans came, they liked the Moai statue, the natives started like cutting down more and more trees to roll the platforms with the statues on to get them in place, cut down all the trees, ran out of resources, and then died off quickly.
Yeah, that was before European expansion, otherwise you were right. So we believe that the Great Die-Off was sometime in the 15th or 16th centuries, about 170 years before Europeans came. Well, how did the loss of the trees affect their society? How do the loss of the trees affect their society?
No resources?
What?
Lack of resources?
Yes, but as long as they were eating trees, so which means they're not coconut trees. What resources?
It eroded their soil, or like they had bad soil. so
Anybody know how that happens? What are we talking about? What is that? Yeah, kind of. Yeah,
Like, once the tree roots aren't in there, it can just, the dirt can wash away.
that's true. The dirt is no longer anchored by roots, but there's something else that happens too with trees. They slow surface flow. You know what I mean by that? When water moves slowly, it just trickles over stuff. But you know when water speeds up, it can move things. You ever seen video of like flooding? Or like fast moving water will like move a boulder, move a school bus, move a house, move your mom. You understand that the faster the water moves, the more it can carry, right? Concept, everybody got that? Key issue, it comes up all year. Okay, so when you get rid of the trees, there's nothing to slow surface water. See, when you've got trees, they're like little gates, and the dirt kind of ramps up, so that kind of slows the water. Does that make sense to everybody? Like the way that you can drag your finger through the water, there's resistance. So likewise, water moving over your fingers would make resistance. So if you have a whole forest of fingers, it's going to really slow the surface. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they lost all their dirt. And if we were going to tell the simple story, it is, be careful that you don't overuse your resources or you might die. That's the moral of the story at the 4th grade level. Maybe if you're like in a 7th grade class, somebody would be like, oh, and there's this thing called erosion. Just so happens that's kind of a candy cane story. The cartoon version is silly Indians cut down too many trees, erosion, then they all starved. That's what you get. Right? It seems to be the way the story is usually told. Yeah?
Why would it be leading them to starve if the main problem with cutting down trees is the surface flow of the water?
Precisely because their diet was only supplemented by agriculture. The bulk of their protein came from the sea, and if you're only eating seafood, you can still get a pretty rounded nutrient profile. You have to eat some greens at some point. You could eat kelp actually to get some of your trace elements. But yeah, you could survive on seafood alone with Japan. So does anybody know one reason why it's harder to get seafood when you got no trees?
Mosquitoes?
Yes?
Yeah, you can't make like tools to catch fish.
Including the boat. Yeah. It's pretty hard to like swim out and grab a dolphin. I tried. It's really difficult. So I want to tell you some of the details from the story that I think are more interesting, because if I was just gonna do the like 4th grade version, you'd all be leaving. That would be it. Okay, bye everybody. But I think it's scarier than that. The real punchline is it's not just Easter Island, and it's not just a simple mismanagement of a resource. I think that we can learn lessons as a society which are very useful to us right now, you and me today. After about 500 years of colonization, things were getting pretty good. If you look at the fossil record, from landfall until about 500, even 1,000 years later, the Rapa Nui were doing pretty well. They ate a rounded diet, their bones showed rapid growth, no malnutrition. It seems like there was no weapons used on other humans, teeth were healthy, there were no major illnesses, no clusters of dying, which makes us believe there were no epidemics. There was no evidence of violence. You can assume that there must have been some, but it seems like for about 1,000 years, the Rapa Nui did pretty well on a little island, 2/3 the size of that thing. And the population spiked to somewhere between 15 and 20,000. The main activity on the day-to-day basis was carving statues. You know you've got it easy when you spend the day chipping away at rocks. And coincidentally, that's a Polynesian universal. All Polynesian cultures have a traditional carving. Some make big wheels for coins, some make big flower pots on columns. And the Rapa Nui, they made these faces called the moi. There were 887 of them on the island. I mean, there are 887 of them on the island. There's also a fake one in the ocean. They were faced away from the ocean to show that my ancestors aren't afraid of you. My ancestors watch over me. And if you have more statues, well, you must be able to feed more stone carvers, so you must be a more powerful person. They were status symbols. And so Rapa Nui society, we believe, was very largely dedicated to showing who had the biggest statue. Yes?
Do you know how big the tallest one is?
I don't know how big the tallest one is, but I know that they were somewhere between 15 and 20 feet, 13 feet. There are pygmy statues. They're arranged all around the shore, and each of those represents a powerful person who had following them as many as 1,000 villagers per site. That's a lot of food provision. If the Jose family can provide 1,000 people food and protection, the Jose family's doing something right. And if you don't believe me, look at all these statues I have arranged on the cliffside to show the might of the Jose family don't have with us. That make sense to everybody? Funny thing is, all these parts of the story are pretty obvious. We know how they were carved. We know how they were moved, and it wasn't like this. If you ask a Rapa Nui, how did they move? The Rapa Nui will say, well, they walked. And modern Western archaeologists would say, you silly little ignorant Indian. No, 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 no. How did they actually get moved by the people you know? And the Rapa Nui are like, bro, they walk, you know, like. And everybody's like, statues can't walk, that's religion, come on. And if you look at early archaeological texts about the Rapa Nui statue mystery, it's like so condescending and insulting and Western judgmentalist, I guess. And then some nerd from MIT figured it out. You can't actually move them this way because the weight will usually snap the palm trees immediately underneath the statue because palm trees are kind of spongy. Anybody ever seen a palm tree on the ground? Ever played on a down palm tree? They're pretty brittle. But they are pretty springy. Has anybody removed a refrigerator? You have to like walk it on one corner and then you lift it up and walk it on. And so they actually walk, yeah. So you have to like lift up on the pole and then everybody goes, okay, ready? Go! And you like pivot it on that leg, right? Then everybody picks up the other three and goes, and you pivot it that way. And so you just kind of inch them along like a refrigerator. And coincidentally, when you do that, it leaves these prints that look like they walk, by the way. Okay, so they made these statues and they set them all up. Yeah.
What do you mean there was a fake one?
Yeah. I used to show pictures of how the collapse of the society led the Eastern Islanders to throw one into the sea, which is kind of inexplicable because they weigh like 15 tons. And I was like, it is a mystery how they got them out to the ocean. And somebody's like, you know I was there, those are fake, right? And I was like, oh, man. I'll show you a picture of them.
So like some Western person was like dropped.
Yes,
Someone.
that's right. Yes, I'm pretty good. You see this agricultural expansion and population growth, they were all happy. You see this consolidation of power and a culture built around those powerful institutions, each of those village leaders. you see some changes in the environment. We can tell that the time of the Easter Island collapse correlates with a drought on top of an El Nino in this part of the ocean. When there's drought, the ocean, when there's El Nino, the ocean holds less dissolved oxygen, so fisheries close down. And so we know that there was some changes in climate and it got harder to get food. So there's this ramping up. We gotta build more statues, everybody more statues. And that's actually why all the trees got cut down. Not because Europeans were impressed by them, but because the demand for statuary rose as village leaders tried to keep their villages doing their thing. It was like a scramble for power, you would say. You see layers upon layers of healthy bones and teeth and healthy bones and teeth. And then there's one very distinct layer. It's very, very thin. The soil has no more organic content because of the erosion. There's no more big seafood because they ran out of boats. There's a layer of shattered seabird bones because they were eating all the seagulls and pelicans that they could hunt on the land. There's a layer of all the cracked shells of stuff that they were grabbing from the shallows, like clams and stuff like that. In that layer, you see a bunch of salt. Because when you cut down all the trees, the wind blows across the island. And what soil remains salinated. You know, the salt spray from the ocean turned the soil too salty to make food. So you see no more agricultural crop evidence. And at that layer, which is very, very thin, you see a bunch of malnutrition bones. Bones that show injury from stone tools. And the long bones are cracked. Anybody know why you crack long bones? Anybody have a dog? To eat the marrow. I'm sorry, but I have like a 30-second punchline here. I have a 30-second punchline. If you could please not pack up, I'll finish in 30 seconds, I swear. This pattern has been seen often. This happened with the Anasazi, with the Mayans, with the Vikings, and as a matter of fact, many people would argue that it's happening today. It is apparently the most common explanation for social collapse. One of my majors was in anthropology. This is a common way for cultures to fall apart. They cannot deal with changes in the environment. They resort to like a scramble for power, warfare that tends to end in cannibalism and social collapse. Yeah. Funny how that comes back, doesn't it? And I should point something out. The worst insult you can say to a Rapa Nui is your mother's flesh sticks to my teeth. That cannibalism thing has cultural memory. It's not a joke. It's what got the Anasazi, it's what got the Mayans, it's what got the Vikings. If you think of a major society in the history of the world, they went that way. The one problem is today, basically we're all tied to each other globally because of trade relationships and resources. You know, it's a global economy, you've heard that? And it's a global environment now, we impact the environments of others. So this is not the way you want your society to end. Okay, talk more later, bye.